Welcome to Tapped In with Tony. I am your host, Tony Bogan. And tonight, joining me is the founder of Write and Vibe Publishing and an author in her own right, Cori Sykes. Cori, thank you for
Yay.
joining.
Yes, happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me on.
Not a problem. I wanted to get to talk to another creator. You know what I mean? I talked to Lamar earlier in the year on the
Yeah.
11th episode, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So tell me about you. Where are you from? What is your background?
Yeah, so I'm from Northeast Ohio. I grew up in Cleveland. I moved around a little bit. I did a somewhat of a short stint in the Army. So um, I used to live in Virginia for a very short time. And then of course I ended up back here in Northeast Ohio. So yeah, I've been here for as long as I can think of. Um, like you mentioned, I am an author. I've been an author for like 10 plus years, but I like to say that I got serious in it probably about a few years ago. And so I write children's books, but I also write urban romance. So that's just like, um, love stories for Black people or for anybody reading it. Um, and so my kids' books, I go by the pen name of Karen May, which was my late mother's name. And then for my romance, I use the pen name of Chachima Cherry.
Nice. And I didn't
Mhm.
know you served in the army. How long did you serve? And thank you for your
I,
service.
yeah, 6 years, 6 years. So I was in the reserves. And so when I first started in the military, this is going to kind of age me or whatever, but I went right out of high school. And this was when the war in overseas was started. And so people always think like, oh, did you get deployed? And I'm like, no, I never got deployed. Um, Funny story, I always just missed the deployment. So
Wow.
when I was here in Cleveland, as I mentioned, I lived in Virginia for a little bit. And so when I was living here and I was getting ready to go to Virginia, when I arrived in Virginia and reported for duty, my command had actually just went overseas. And so I was like, okay, I guess I missed it. And then when I moved back to Cleveland, my station had just kind of come back from overseas, and so they weren't due to go back over there again. And so it was like I was just always missing it, but I wasn't too sad about that. I didn't want to go overseas.
Gotcha. And how did you get involved in writing?
Yeah, so a lot of people will say like they've been writing for, since they were a kid. Like they always knew they were supposed to write. And I didn't always know I was supposed to write. Like I liked writing and I didn't know if I was good at it. I just kind of would write in my notebooks, tear it up, and then like throw it away as a kid. But when I was in I want to say my senior year of college, I went to Baldwin Wallace University, actually Baldwin Wallace College when I was there. And so in my senior year of college, I was going for accounting, which is what I got my degree in. And it was one of those things I would just like start writing again. I was writing in my notebook. And so during classes, I would be just kind of finishing up a story. And which I always, when I tell this story, I always recommend like, don't do what I did. Pay attention in class. You're gonna need to graduate. You're gonna need some good grades. So like don't do what I did. Um, but yeah, so by the time I graduated, I was like, oh my god, like I think I have a whole story here. And, so I tried the traditional publishing route, which I don't know if everybody knows, but that's when you try and like get an agent and get signed, like a big deal with like a big publishing company, say like Simon and Schuster or like Random House Penguin or something like that. And it didn't work out. And so when I met Lamar, I told him I was writing or I had written a book, and he's like, "What? You wrote a book?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I did." He's like, "Was it any good?" I'm like, "I don't really know." And so he asked me to send it to him. And I sent it to him, and I was kind of nervous because I'm like, oh, I'm trying to think, like, were we dating at the moment or were we just like talking? And so I don't actually remember where our relationship was at in that moment, but he ended up reading it, and he loved it. And then he sent it to his sister, and she loved it, which gave me like some new fire up under my feet. I'm like, yeah, I can write. Like, they said it's good, so it's got to be good. And so I went through the self publishing route, which is kind of like where you do it mostly on your own. You just, a lot of places like Amazon and Draft to Digital and like Kobo have really made it a lot easier for authors to do that current day. And so in 2011, I ended up publishing my first book, which was called The Red in Her Eyes. And it's not out anymore. I took it out from publication because that was in 2011. And so this is 2023. So it was a long time ago. And so what I did was I rewrote the book and I republished it under my company, Write and Vibe. And so the new title for that book is Just Like Old Times, and that came out in 2022, I think. Yeah, 2022. Time just goes by so fast.
Nice. And when did what's the story behind the name Right and Vibe Publishing? That's a really cool name, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah. Um, so along the way when I was like writing, and this is kind of like somewhat of a long story, but um, I was always, as I say, I was like always writer. I was writing in 2017. I was working on a story and I couldn't really like finish it. And then my daughter was born, and I really thought like, I was like, oh, this, I'm gonna finish it. But I don't know why I thought I could finish a book with a newborn. It was just like crazy, wild thinking. But in 2018, my mother passed away. And so I was like, well, this is the time for me to really like finish writing and maybe write her story. And so I took a month off to try and write. And so I can be really particular about writing spaces. And so I tried going to like places like Starbucks or something. You always see people with their laptops there. And you
Yeah.
think, oh, what a great idea. I'm gonna come here with my laptop and I'm gonna be like so productive. And I just wasn't. I mean, I tried so many different places, but the seats were either like too hard or it was too soft or they were too uncomfortable or it was too loud or, it wasn't loud enough. And, or like the smell of food was making me so hungry. I
So
just
many
had to get up.
distractions.
Yeah, it was just too much. And so I was like, I have this really great idea. I'm going to open up my own writer's center that is just like perfect for whatever type of writing situation you're looking for. And so I was like, I'm going to really spend some time doing this. And this was in 2019 that I really started putting it all together with an opening date in 2020. So I wanted people to be able to come and write and then like just catch the vibe, right? So you catch the vibe so that you can
Yeah.
really get your writing done. And yeah, and then the pandemic started and I was like, oh, well, there goes Write and Vibe. But any idea given to you by God is never something that's just going to just go away. And so I ended up turning it into a publishing company later in 2020. And so what I did was like, I just reached out to my friend because I didn't have anything to publish. And so I reached out to my friend, like, do you have anything that I could publish as like a test? And she was like, I think I can put something together. And so in December of 2020, the very first book published by Write and Vibe came out, and it is called I Met a Guy and Other Things You Can Only Discuss with Your Sister Girlfriends. It's the author, yeah. The author, Valencia Joy, she likes to call it a girl's night out on paper. And it's a very short, quick read. And again, like the purpose of Write and Vibe, the Writer Center, in the beginning was to be able to publish the writer's books that came to the center. But that was like down the line.
Mm,
And so like once I couldn't like get the writer center going, I was like, well, what else can I do with Write and Vibe? And so I sat on it and then I was like, well, let me try publishing on for size. And I've been doing it ever since.
nice, nice. And I noticed you said in the beginning you were talking about urban romance. I read a couple urban romance novels myself.
Oh yeah.
Dickens' Men Cry in the Dark,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Sister Scenes from a Sister by Lolita Files.
Okay.
I've heard of those are really good books. I've read them over and over.
Yes, yes, yeah. And people will be like, "Oh, you write romance. Oh, taboo." And I'm like, "Well, listen here. Like, if you are in a relationship or you've ever been in a relationship, then you know what a romance and a love story looks like. And so all romance writers do is take love stories and they put them on paper. So it's
Yep.
like there's nothing like to be like taboo or ashamed of or anything. It's just a story,
Oh, yeah, and
you know?
sometimes you can see yourself in that story. Whenever
Mhm.
you pick it up, it's really hard to put down. Next thing
Yes.
you know, you're reading, "Oh, wait, it's 2, 3 in the morning."
Yeah, yeah.
So, you've written urban romance. When did your first urban romance novel come out? Was it the first one that you had made in 2011, or was it?
Yes, yeah, yeah, that was in 2011. And so then in 2015, I did release another one that I wouldn't really call that romance. I would have called it more like women, just kind of women's fiction or contemporary fiction or something like that. And so, you being a publisher and having to be a publisher, just having been in the industry for a good amount of time, um, I learned why like genre classification was so important. And so, like if we think about like back in the day, I used to classify my books as like contemporary, urban, romance, fiction. It was just like super long, super like complicated for no reason. But there's a reason that genres are so important and that we really kind of, when I read the stories and when I publish them, that I classify it in the correct genre. So like if you go to any bookstore or library and you're into like science fiction or something like that, but then you pick up a book and the author called it science fiction, but you pick up a book and you start reading it and it's really not science fiction, say it's something like horror or something like that, you're gonna be mad. Like, I didn't want to read a horror story. I don't even like reading horror stories. And so you're gonna like pick that book up, throw it against the wall, like trash, 1 star, like things like that. And so like it's really important for like to classify books in the right genre.
Absolutely, and,
Mhm.
I haven't read a lot of books lately, but I know I've read, Brad Meltzer, The Millionaires. Funny
Okay.
story about that, I actually sold it years ago, but then I went back to the same place I picked it up. It
Mhm.
was right back on the shelf, and I bought it, and I've had
No way.
sometimes it's like the books grow with you. Like, I bought it
Yeah.
years ago. It was a really good book. It was about
Mhm.
500 some odd pages long. So
Oh,
if
wow.
you definitely have time. Like, it's called The Millionaires by Brad Meltzer. It's really good.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I read Grisham, A Time to Kill by
Mhm.
John Grisham,
Mhm.
and another book, The Good Counsel. The Good
Okay.
Counsel. Those are like some really good books I've read.
Yeah. John
Um,
Grisham was one of my mother's favorite authors. So, yeah. I personally have not read like John Grisham, but I have her books and so it's shitting. I'm talking too fast. I'm talking
you're
too fast.
good.
I was
You're
trying to say it's sitting on my shelf.
good. Oh, man. You're good. No worries.
Excuse me
No,
there.
you're all good. You're all good. You're all good here. Yeah, Grisham is a really great author, and there are some books that you see or you've probably read are really good that maybe sometimes are there ever times where you think, maybe this book that I've read could be a movie adaptation, like The Millionaires, like Brad Meltzer. I wonder
Yeah.
if that could ever get made into a movie adaptation.
Yeah, so many of them, because it's like, especially the ones you're like, I can't put it down. Like, I just started reading this book, and I'm gonna pull it up because I don't even know the title, but I just picked it up today, and I have it's called Pen Pal by, who is it by? JT Geisinger. I don't know. But I have no idea where it's going. It's like the lady, and that's why I can't put it down. Like,
Yeah.
she's getting letters from like someone in the penitentiary. Um, and then she's also like, her lights are flickering in her house. Like, there's a ghost in there, and her husband just died. And then she's like met this guy, and I'm just like, and then she's kind of like experienced some psychotic breaks. I'm like, I don't even know where this is going, but I need to know where it's going.
Oh,
So it's
yeah.
like I can't even put it down.
Yes, that's when you know you have a good book, when it's like
Yeah.
you really are dying to know what happens
Mm-hmm.
next. And
Yes.
you go from, writing about urban romance to
Mhm.
children's books.
Yes.
That's a huge jump.
Yeah. So I explained the jump, right? Here's my explanation of the jump. You can't have children without romance, right? So it's like that goes kind
True.
of hand in hand, you
In a
know?
way, yes.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so like, I do. So I write the children's books because I wanted a way to really like help my mother live on. My mother always wanted to be a writer. And then she also passed away before she got to take like journeys with my youngest daughter. And so that's what she does in the books. And that's why my pen name is Karen May. That was her name. And so I write under Karen May so that she can become a writer, posthumously. Humously.
Posthumously?
Yes, thank you. um, and then she also takes journeys in the books with my daughters, and so the books, they do teach the kids about different African queens. That's the series right now, and so the first one is Curiously Kara meets Pharaoh Hatshepsut, and she was the second known female pharaoh in Egypt. And then the second one is Curiously Kara meets Queen Amana-Renas. Now, Queen Amana-Renas was one of the queens of the Kingdom of Kush, and she was like super dope. She had connections with Caesar, Caesar Augustus.
Wow.
And so, but she's not very well known because the Kingdom of Kush, they wrote in Meroitic text. And so the paleontologists and what are they called? Not
I
paleontologists, but
archaeologist?
archaeologists, I think that's it. They haven't been able to decipher the Meroitic text yet.
Mm,
And so it's like a lot of the history of the Kingdom of Kush comes from the Roman history. And
mm,
so I figure like once they are able to decipher the Meroitic text, that we'll learn more about her reign. But until then, um, we don't know as much.
yet.
Yeah, exactly,
'Cause,
exactly.
I believe this is the second time I've ever heard the Kingdom of Kush reference. The first time was in the Nas song, "I Know I Can,"
Mhm.
especially in that 3rd verse where he mentions that everyone went to get books to learn from Black teachers who
Yeah.
taught Greeks and Romans.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm kinda dating myself there on that one too. Yeah. But that's really cool, just, creating the stuff about Curiosity Kara, like,
Mhm.
getting the African queens, getting more of the history of African queens into the mainstream, especially for kids who may not know about that because it's not really taught in schools. I think
Yes.
that's something that if that definitely does get into the curriculum, that could not only help kids learn
Yeah.
to read, but also give them a more, open mind about things and learn more about history.
Exactly, exactly. And when I do put those kids' books out, I go into like months of just research. I'm reading, I'm purchasing books, I'm borrowing books from the library.
Mm,
I'm on YouTube, I'm on like just the internet reading articles and stuff. So I always like at the back of the book, I'll cite all my sources so that if the little learners or their caregivers want to learn more, they can go and they can read more about them. And in the beginning of the books, I always include like a glossary and like a pronunciations page as well, because there's a lot of like language. It's kind of hard to understand. It really, when you get into it, it's like learning a whole new language, trying to
Yeah.
pronounce like Hatshepsut. Like, can get a little tongue tied there? It's very easy to do in Amon-Arenas.
Oh, yeah. And that definitely helps, that definitely
Mhm.
helps, and you have all that stuff to where people can learn more. They
Yeah.
say back in the day, they said it back then, and they said now, reading is fundamental.
Always will be. Always.
And what are the future plans for, like, any books, whether it be children's books, urban romance,
hmm
just the future of Write and Vibe? Is it gonna be like a studio, or are you gonna co-author a book with Lamar?
Lamar does not need my help to co-author anything. He is such a brilliant man. A lot of times I just bounce ideas off of him because he just is just like this creative spark all day, every day. Um, but as far as like Write and Vibe, I don't know if there would be a studio, but that would be amazing. I am getting ready to launch a virtual like Write and Vibe, where kind of like is like the in person. So it'll have like write-ins, and write-ins are where everybody gathers virtually or in person, and we write for like an hour together.
Mm,
And what that does is it helps like establish one, a writing habit, but two, once you get into your story and you're writing, you can just keep going. And it's a lot harder to start and then stop. And then you'll never finish a book. So the goal is to really just kind of work with like-minded people to get your books done. Um, as an author, I am working on the second book of the Dalton family. So the book, just like Old Times, the first romance book, um, has a family of the Daltons, and so there's six of them, and so it's a series, and so the second book will be out next year. That one is called Next Time Around, and I am working on a standalone. It's not part of the series. It's called Sync. It's been going on online on Kindle Vella. And so I'm almost done with that. It's a shorter story, and so that'll be published soon. As far as Curiously Kara, I don't know who the next African queen is. I always wait to see who's just gonna pop out and like really like catch my interest. So I don't actually know who the next queen will be. But that's again like that'll be like a series as well. And so I also hope to venture into a different series. I'm really interested in astrology and astronomy, and so I want to teach the kids how like astrology kind of connects to astronomy as well. So like the planets and the gods that are over them,
mm.
and with the horoscopes and everything like that. And so those are just the future plans of it all. Um, of course, anybody can always like follow along the journey. I'm really not good at social media. I'm trying to be better, but like anybody can always like connect on a social media. My page is on name for Write and Vibe on Instagram and Facebook is at Write and Vibe. So that's WRITEANDVIBE. So Write and Vibe, and that's also the website address. You can follow me along on my personal IG page at author.chi. I don't post too much there either, but I do share funny TikToks in my stories. And so if you have the same kind of humor as me, you'll have a good time in my stories. Um, and then of course, Curiously Kara and my author page for Chachima Cherry is going to be at Chachima Cherry. And of course, Curiously Kara is at Curiously_Kara. And so that's Kara with a C. So Cara. Um, yeah. And then if anybody wants to publish with Write and Vibe, we're always looking for new stories, new talent. publish most genre fiction. And so you're talking about like contemporary fiction, women's fiction, romance, urban fiction, things like that. Some memoir as well. And so, of course, just go to writeandvibe.com and you'll see a link where you can schedule like a free consultation. It's 30 minutes. I'm giving you all the tea in the writing business. So even if you don't publish with Write and Vibe um, because maybe your journey looks more like, well, I can do it myself. That's cool, right? But let's have a chat and see how Write and Vibe can assist you.
Nice, and thank you for the plug. And my last
Yeah.
question to you is, what would you say has been the best part about being a publisher, and what would you say are some challenges that people should, look out for on their
Yeah.
writing career for any aspiring writers?
Yeah. So the challenges with the just being a writer, I would say, is it changes. The industry is changing like big time right now. And that's because of AI, so artificial intelligence. Um, People are cranking out AI books at a speed that authors cannot keep up with, and they're saturating the market. And it
Absolutely.
yeah, like it's really bad.
It's
And then
bad.
on top of that, the way Amazon and some other businesses, their pay out model is that like the more reads you get, the more they recommend. So we're seeing where regular authors are kind of getting pushed out of the publishing industry. And in the publishing industry, like authors don't make that much anyway. And so it's really becoming kind of hard just to make a living off of being an author.
Yeah.
So that's the
That's
the
key.
struggle right now. Yeah.
Especially
Um
AI being a big thing, and not talking
mhm.
about Allen Iverson either.
Right, right.
Uh,
We are not talking about Iverson.
or practice.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like you see some of these articles. I do sports stuff and I've helped Lamar out a couple times.
Mhm.
There'll be AI articles that say something to the lines of a close encounter of the athletic affair where this
Mhm.
team beat this team 14-7. And it's just like there's no effort put into it.
Yeah.
It's just like the effort being put in by the AI is not nowhere close to what an author can put together.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, like, and being an author is a very lonely field, okay? We sit at our desk and we go up, like, we pull stories like out of our head. And so, yeah, it's a lot of effort for a very little payoff. So yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What was your other question though? I can't
What
remember.
were some of the what's some of your most favorite things about publishing? I know you said that.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Yes, yes. My favorite thing about publishing is just like holding the book in your hand for the very first time. It is nothing like seeing all of your hard work being like, "Oh my god, like I did it." And it comes you have that feeling with every single book. And not only do I enjoy that feeling like with my own books, but with my authors as well. So like when we're doing the review, so we'll always do like a review before the book actually goes to publication. And so I order like a test copy for me and a test copy for the author. And so we go through and everything like that just to make sure like we've caught all the mistakes and things like that, and the cover looks good. And so when I get to deliver that copy to the author and they either like they're tearing up or they're just like pure joy, like you can't replace like that kind of joy that comes from being
Absolutely.
able to do that. And so that is my favorite part of the job. In addition, like one new favorite, I was able to go to New York City earlier a couple months ago because our books had won awards. And as part of the awards, we were featured on the NASDAQ billboard in Times Square. And just being able to see your name and the book and like those big lights, I was like,
Nice. Have you done any like book signings or anything like that?
yeah, yeah, I do
Tell me
book
about that.
signings. Yeah, I have oh my gosh, it's embarrassing to admit I haven't done one for Curiously Cara. I just realized that when you asked me that.
Mm,
I will be at Loganberry Books coming up for their children's fair.
mm.
That is in September. Let me see. Let me say the date right quick. That is September. Of course, my calendar is not loading, but that's in September. I think it might be like the 16th or something like
Okay.
that. No, I'm sorry. Okay, September 9th at Loganberry. I'll be there signing books, and anybody can come purchase either one, Hatshepsut or Arenas. They can come. We can chat it up just like we're doing here. Come see me, y'all.
Okay, cool. And thank you for coming on Tapped In with Tony. For
Absolutely.
those of you that are watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify, Tapped In with Tony is available on Spotify and wherever you get your podcast. And make sure to sub to the YouTube channel under the same name, Tony Book. Thank you guys, and see you next week.
Bye bye.